The stars looked different when you were about to die. Captain Jake Morrison knew this as he stared out the cracked viewport of his ship, the Ghost Runner. 3 months ago, he had been on a simple patrol mission near the Vega system. Now he drifted in the cold emptiness of space, his ship looking like a piece of floating junk. But looks could be very deceiving. "Sir, we're picking up multiple ships on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from his position at the sensor station. His voice was calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. "It's the Coalition fleet. All of them." Jake nodded slowly. They had been waiting for this moment. The Zephyrian Empire, the Keth Hegemony, and the Plasma Alliance had finally done what everyone said was impossible. They had put aside their differences and joined forces. Their target was simple: wipe humanity from their section of the galaxy. How many ships? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 847 confirmed vessels, sir, Carter replied. That's more firepower than we've ever seen in one place. Chief Engineer Kate Phillips looked up from her workstation. Her hands were covered in grease, and she had been working nonstop for weeks. "The quantum cascade system is ready, Captain. All we need is your word." Jake looked at his small crew. There were only 12 people aboard the Ghost Runner, and right now they held the fate of humanity in their hands. The alien coalition had no idea what they were flying into. To them, his ship looked like a damaged wreck that wasn't worth their attention. That was exactly what Jake wanted them to think. Status report on Project Lazarus. Jake said quietly. Phillips wiped her hands on a dirty rag. "All systems are green, sir. The power signature is completely masked. To any external sensors, we look like a dead ship with maybe 20% power remaining. The hull damage we created looks very real. It had taken weeks of careful planning to make the Ghost Runner appear destroyed. They had used small explosives to create realistic damage patterns on the hull. They had shut down all non-essential systems. They had even released some atmosphere to make it look like they were losing life support. But underneath the fake damage, the Ghost Runner was more powerful than any ship humanity had ever built. Lieutenant Ben Carter turned around in his chair. "Sir, I'm getting communication traffic from the Coalition fleet. They're coordinating their approach to the Sol system. They plan to hit our colonies first, then move on to Earth." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "What about our defense fleet?" "Admiral Tony Baker has 23 ships ready for battle," Carter said. "The Defiant, the Ranger, the Hunter, and 20 others. They're taking positions around Mars." 23 ships against 847. It wasn't even a fair fight. The aliens knew it, and so did every human in the fleet. That's why they had to make sure this plan worked perfectly. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Chun from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Baker." "Put it through," Jake said. Admiral Baker's voice filled the bridge. He sounded tired and worried. "All ships. This is Admiral Baker. The Coalition fleet will reach our outer colonies in 6 hours. I want all civilian transports to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Military vessels will hold defensive positions and buy as much time as possible." Jake could hear the defeat in the Admiral's voice. Baker was a good man, but he was preparing for humanity's last stand. He had no idea that Jake and his crew had a different plan. "Should we respond, sir?" Chin asked. Jake shook his head. "Radio silence. As far as anyone knows, we're still missing in action." The Ghost Runner continued to drift through space, looking like nothing more than space junk. But inside the ship, every system was perfectly functional. The quantum cascade weapons were charged and ready. The experimental shield generators were online. The enhanced engines could push the ship faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. "Sir," Carter said, "the Coalition fleet is changing course. They're heading straight for us." Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. "Perfect. Are they scanning us?" "Yes, sir. Standard sensor sweeps. They're cataloging us as space debris. Low priority." That was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The Coalition fleet was so confident in their overwhelming numbers that they weren't paying attention to one apparently dead human ship. They were about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. Commander Lisa Hayes of the Alien Coalition probably looked at the Ghost Runner and saw exactly what Jake wanted her to see. A small, primitive human vessel that had been damaged beyond repair. Nothing worth worrying about when you had nearly 900 warships at your command. The aliens had made this mistake before. They always underestimated humanity. They looked at human technology and saw primitive weapons and slow ships. They saw a young species that had barely learned how to travel between stars. What they didn't see was human creativity. They didn't understand that humans had a gift for finding new solutions to old problems. They especially didn't understand that when humans were backed into a corner, they became very dangerous. "Phillips," Jake said, "begin the final system checks. I want everything perfect when the time comes." "Yes, sir," Phillips replied. She disappeared into the engineering section. With a heart of Project Lazarus waited in the shadows. Jake looked out at the approaching alien fleet. Soon, those ships would be close enough to see Earth with their own sensors. They would see human colonies and think about all the people they were going to kill. They would see Admiral Baker's small fleet and laugh at how easy this was going to be. But first, they would have to fly past one small, damaged human ship that they had decided wasn't worth their attention. That would be their final mistake. "All hands," Jake announced over the ship's internal communication system. "This is the captain. In a few hours, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you ignore the wrong ship. Everyone knows their jobs. Everyone knows what's at stake. Let's make sure humanity survives this day." The Ghost Runner drifted silently through space, waiting for the alien Armada to come within range. Soon, the real battle would begin. Supreme Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. Around him, the largest war fleet in galactic history moved through space like a steel river of death. 847 ships from 3 different alien races, all united for one purpose: to remove the human problem from their sector of space. Status report: Vextar commanded. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "All ships are maintaining formation, Commander," replied his tactical officer. "We will reach the human outer colonies in 4 hours and 37 minutes. Vextar nodded with satisfaction. The humans had been a minor annoyance for too long. They were a primitive species that had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel. Their ships were slow, and their weapons were weak. It was time to end their expansion into civilized space. "What about human defensive positions?" Vextar asked. Long-range sensors showed 23 human vessels taking positions around their 4th planet. They appear to be preparing for a defensive stand. 23 ships. Vextar almost felt sorry for them. Each of his Zephyrian destroyers could handle 5 human ships without difficulty. The Keth battleships were even more powerful, and the Plasma Alliance cruisers had weapons that could cut through human armor like it was paper. "Commander," said the sensor officer, "we're detecting some space debris in our path. It appears to be a damaged human vessel." Vextar looked at the display screen. The ship looked like typical human junk. Primitive design, obvious battle damage, and minimal power readings. "Can we identify the vessel?" "Scanning now, sir. It appears to be a human patrol ship, probably destroyed in some minor conflict. Should we destroy it?" "Don't waste ammunition on garbage," Vextar said dismissively. "We have real targets ahead of us." The Coalition fleet continued its approach, passing within a few thousand kilometers of the Ghost Runner. None of the alien commanders gave the damaged human ship a second thought. It was exactly what Jake Morrison had been counting on. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, panic was spreading through the human colonies. Captain Danny Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human cruiser Defiant, watching as civilian transports fled from the outer settlements. "This is insane," Rodriguez said to his first officer. "We can't fight that many ships. We need to evacuate everyone and retreat deeper into human space." "Admiral Baker's orders are clear," his first officer replied. "We hold this line and buy time for the evacuation." Rodriguez knew they were all going to die. The math was simple and brutal. The alien coalition had 40 times more ships than humanity could field. Even if every human ship fought perfectly and destroyed 5 enemy vessels before being destroyed, they would still lose. But Admiral Tony Baker had made his decision. The human fleet would make their stand at Mars and hope that someone, somewhere, would remember that humanity had tried to defend their homes. Back aboard the Ghost Runner, Chief Engineer Kate Phillips made her final preparations. The quantum cascade system was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It didn't just fire energy beams or launch missiles. It actually changed the laws of physics in a small area of space. "Captain," Phillips called out, "I'm reading some interesting communication traffic from the alien fleet." Jake Morrison walked over to her station. "What kind of traffic?" "They're discussing battle formations and target priorities. It sounds like they plan to destroy our colonies first, then move on to Earth. They want to make an example of us." Jake felt cold anger settle in his stomach. The aliens weren't just trying to win a war. They wanted to completely wipe out humanity. They wanted to make sure that no other young species would dare to expand into their territory. "Any mention of us?" Jake asked. Phillips shook her head. "Nothing. They passed right by us without even slowing down. We might as well be invisible." Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his sensor station. "Sir, the Coalition fleet is approaching the outer marker buoys. They'll be in range of our colonies in less than 4 hours." Jake walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at the distant alien fleet. From here, they looked like tiny points of light, but he knew each one of those lights represented hundreds of alien soldiers who wanted to kill every human they could find. "Phillips, what's the maximum range of the quantum cascade system?" Jake asked. "In the current configuration, about 50,000 kilometers for full effectiveness. We can extend that to 75,000, but the power drops significantly." Jake did quick calculations in his head. The alien fleet was spread out over nearly 100,000 kilometers of space. That was actually perfect for what he had planned. They had arranged themselves in the classic coalition formation, with each species maintaining their own section of the fleet. "Carter, are you monitoring their command frequencies?" "Yes, sir. They're not even encrypting their communications. I think they're so confident of victory that they don't care if we hear them planning our destruction." That level of arrogance was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The aliens were so sure of their superiority that they weren't taking any real precautions. They saw humanity as an annoying insect that needed to be stepped on. Lieutenant Amy Chun turned around from her communication station. "Captain, I'm receiving another message from Admiral Baker. He's asking all ships to report their status." Still maintaining radio silence, Jake said, "Let him think we're lost. It's better that way." Jake knew that Admiral Baker would have tried to stop him if he knew about Project Lazarus. The Admiral was a good man, but he thought in terms of conventional warfare. He would never have approved a plan that relied on one ship taking on an entire enemy fleet. But Jake had studied human history, and he knew that sometimes the most impossible plans were the ones that worked. The aliens expected humanity to fight like everyone else. They expected human ships to line up and exchange fire until the stronger force won. They had no idea that humans had learned to fight dirty. "Sir," Carter said, "the lead elements of the Coalition fleet are beginning their attack run on Colony 7. They're launching long-range missiles." Jake watched the tactical display as dozens of alien missiles streaked toward the human colony. In a few minutes, thousands of civilians would die, and the aliens would celebrate their easy victory. "Phillips, bring Project Lazarus to full power," Jake commanded. "Yes, sir. All systems are green. We can fire on your command." Jake looked at his crew one more time. These 12 people were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. They were going to fight a battle that would either save humanity or get them all killed in the first few seconds. "All hands, battle stations," Jake announced. "It's time to show these aliens what happens when they ignore the wrong ship." The first alien missiles hit Colony 7 like hammers of light. Captain Danny Rodriguez watched from a bridge of Defiant as the human settlement disappeared in a series of bright explosions. 30,000 colonists had called that place home just minutes before. "Those bastards," Rodriguez whispered. His hands gripped the arms of the command chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. They didn't even give them a chance to surrender. Sir, his tactical officer said, the alien fleet is spreading out into attack formation. They're preparing to hit all our outer colonies at once. Rodriguez looked at his tactical display. The coalition fleet had arranged itself in a perfect demonstration of overwhelming force. Each group of alien ships was targeting a different human settlement. They wanted to destroy humanity's expansion into space in one coordinated strike. Contact Admiral Baker, Rodriguez ordered. Tell him the aliens have begun their attack. Meanwhile, aboard the coalition flagship, Supreme Commander Vextar watched the destruction of Colony 7 with satisfaction. The human settlement had been eliminated in less than 2 minutes. No return fire, no meaningful resistance. Just a quick death that primitive species deserved. Excellent work, Vextar told his weapons officer. Begin the attack on the remaining human colonies. I want them all destroyed within the hour. Commander Lisa Hayes of the Keth Hegemony appeared on Vextar's communication screen. Her species looked like tall, thin humans with gray skin and large black eyes. The northern section is ready to begin bombardment of colonies 3 and 4, she reported. Proceed, Vextar replied. The Plasma Alliance will handle colonies 5 and 6. We'll move on to their main defensive fleet once the settlements are eliminated. It was going exactly as planned. The coalition forces would destroy all human colonies first, then deal with a small human fleet around Mars. After that, they would move on to Earth itself and finish the job. Within a week, humanity would be nothing but a memory. But as the alien fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, they passed close to what looked like a piece of floating wreckage. The Ghost Runner continued to drift silently, showing no signs of life to the alien sensors. On the bridge of the Ghost Runner, Captain Jake Morrison watched as alien missiles destroyed another human colony. Colony 4 disappeared in a ball of fire and radiation. More innocent people dead because the aliens saw humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Sir, Lieutenant Ben Carter said quietly, Colony 5 just went dark. The aliens are being very thorough. Jake nodded grimly. Every death was making him more determined to make the aliens pay for their cruelty. Project Lazarus had been designed as a last resort weapon, something to use only when humanity faced complete extinction. That moment had arrived. Phillips, what's our target selection? Jake asked. Chief Engineer Kate Phillips looked up from her controls. The quantum cascade system was finally ready for combat. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment. I recommend we start with the Zephyrian heavy battleships in the center of their formation. If we can take out their command vessels first, it will create confusion in their fleet. Agreed, Jake said. Carter, are you still monitoring their communications? Yes, sir. They're not even trying to hide their battle plans. Right now, they're coordinating the attack on our remaining colonies. After that, they plan to engage Admiral Baker's fleet. Jake could hear the arrogance in the alien communications. They were so confident of victory that they were treating this like a training exercise. They had no idea that one small human ship was about to change everything. Sir, said Lieutenant Amy Chin, I'm picking up a distress signal from Colony 8. They're under attack and requesting immediate assistance. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He wanted to help those people, but he couldn't reveal his position yet. The Ghost Runner had to wait until the alien fleet was in the perfect position. If he acted too early, some of the coalition ships might escape and warn others about humanity's new weapon. Maintain position, Jake ordered. We stick to the plan. It was the hardest decision he had ever made, but Jake knew that the survival of the entire human species depended on timing this attack perfectly. A few more minutes of waiting would save millions of human lives. Admiral Tony Baker stood in the command center of the Europa Defense Station, watching as his worst fears came true. The alien coalition was systematically destroying every human colony in the outer system. His small fleet of 23 ships could do nothing but watch as entire settlements were wiped from existence. Sir, his communication officer said, we're receiving evacuation requests from colonies 9 and 10. They're asking for immediate transport. Send everything we have, Baker ordered. Get as many people out as possible. Captain Amy Brooks of the human cruiser Ranger was already moving her ship toward Colony 9. She knew it was probably a suicide mission, but she couldn't just watch innocent people die without trying to help. "This is madness," Brooks said to her first officer. "We're flying straight into the middle of the alien fleet." "Orders are orders," her first officer replied. "Besides, maybe we can save a few lives before they destroy us." The Ranger accelerated toward Colony 9, passing dangerously close to a group of Plasma Alliance cruisers. The alien ships detected the human vessel immediately and began to turn their weapons toward it. But something strange happened. As the Ranger flew past the Ghost Runner's position, Captain Morrison made a decision that changed everything. "Phillips, bring us online," Jake commanded. "It's time." "Sir, the alien fleet isn't fully in position yet," Carter warned. "I know," Jake replied, "but I won't sit here and watch Captain Brooks die trying to save those colonists. We're going active. Now!" Phillips's hands flew across her control panel. Deep in the Ghost Runner's engineering section, the quantum cascade system came fully online. The ship's true power signature blazed across every sensor in the system. On the Coalition flagship, Vexstar Sensor Officer suddenly looked up in alarm. "Commander, I'm detecting a massive power spike from that debris we passed earlier." Vexstar looked at his display screen in confusion. The damaged human ship that they had ignored was now showing energy readings that seemed impossible. "What kind of power signature is that?" "I don't know, sir. It's unlike anything in our database. The energy output it's off the scale." Commander Hayes' voice came over the communication channel, and for the first time, she sounded worried. "Vexstar, you seeing this? That human ship isn't dead. It's been hiding its true capabilities." Vexstar felt the first touch of concern. He had fought many battles, but he had never seen energy readings like these from any human ship. "All vessels, this is Supreme Commander Vexstar. We may have underestimated human technology. Prepare for possible." He never finished the sentence. Captain Jake Morrison had heard enough alien communication for one day. "Fire," Jake said quietly. The Ghost Runner's quantum cascade weapons fired for the first time in combat, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first quantum cascade beam left the Ghost Runner and hit the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory exactly in the center of its main hull. But this wasn't like any weapon the aliens had ever seen before. Instead of an explosion or a burst of energy, something much stranger happened. Reality itself seemed to break around the alien ship. Supreme Commander Vexstar had exactly 3 seconds to realize that his massive battleship was being torn apart at the molecular level before he and his entire crew simply ceased to exist. The Eternal Glory didn't explode or burn. It just stopped being there, leaving behind only empty space where a moment before there had been a ship with 4,000 alien soldiers. What in the name of the ancestors was that? Commander Lisa Hayes screamed over the communication channel from her Keth command ship. Her question was answered when the quantum cascade effect spread outward from where the Eternal Glory had been. The strange energy wave hit 3 more Zephyrian destroyers and 2 Plasma Alliance cruisers. All 5 ships vanished in the same impossible way, their atoms scattered across dimensions that normal physics couldn't explain. On the bridge of the Ghost Runner, Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet's reaction with grim satisfaction. "Phillips, what's our weapon status?" "All systems nominal, Captain," Chief Engineer Kate Phillips replied. "The quantum cascade system is cycling for the next shot. 30 seconds to full charge." Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his sensor station with wide eyes. "Sir, I'm reading massive confusion in the alien fleet. They're trying to understand what just happened to their flagship." "They don't need to understand it," Jake said coldly. "They just need to experience it. Target the Keth command vessel." But even as Jake gave his orders, he knew that the real surprise was just beginning. Project Lazarus had never been limited to just one ship. For months, human engineers had been secretly installing quantum cascade systems on other vessels in the fleet. Admiral Tony Baker was staring at his tactical display in complete shock. "What the hell just happened out there?" he demanded. 5 alien ships just disappeared off my sensors." "Sir," his communication officer said, We're receiving a priority signal from Captain Morrison aboard the Ghost Runner." "Morrison?" Baker said in amazement. "We thought he was dead." Jake's voice filled the command center. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison. Project Lazarus is now active. All modified vessels are authorized to reveal themselves and engage the enemy." Before Baker could ask what Project Lazarus was, something amazing happened throughout the human fleet. Ships that looked damaged or underpowered suddenly blazed alive with energy signatures that rivaled anything the aliens had. Captain Amy Brooks aboard the Ranger felt her ship shudder as hidden systems came online. "What's happening?" she asked her engineering officer. "Ma'am, we're showing massive power increases across all systems. I'm reading weapon configurations that aren't in any of our manuals." "This is Captain Laura White aboard the Sentinel," came another voice over the communication channel. "My ship is showing the same thing. We've got weapons I've never seen before." Commander Paul Davis on the Vanguard reported similar readings. Throughout the human fleet, ships that the aliens had dismissed as primitive were revealing their true capabilities. The Coalition fleet, which had been confident in their overwhelming superiority just minutes before, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they didn't understand at all. All ships retreat to safe distance. Commander Hayes ordered desperately, "We need to regroup and analyze this new human technology." But it was already too late for a safe retreat. The Ghost Runner fired its second quantum cascade beam, and Commander Hayes' flagship, the Ket Dominion, vanished just as completely as the Eternal Glory had. The wave of impossible energy spread outward, taking 4 more alien vessels with it. "Sir," Lieutenant Amychin reported, "I'm detecting panic communications throughout the alien fleet. They're trying to call for reinforcements." "Jam all their communications," Jake ordered. "I don't want word of this getting out until we're finished here." Captain Rick Turner, Morrison's weapons officer, was working at a station with the focused intensity of a man who knew he was making history. "Captain, we have multiple target locks. The alien ships are bunched together perfectly for maximum cascade effect." Jake looked at the tactical display. The aliens had arranged their fleet in the perfect formation to demonstrate their overwhelming numbers. Now that same formation was working against them. The quantum cascade weapons were designed to spread their effect to nearby ships, and the aliens had made themselves perfect targets. "Fire at will," Jake commanded. The Ghost Runner's weapons fired again, and this time 3 separate cascade beams reached out toward different sections of the alien fleet. Each beam created its own zone of impossible destruction, and the cascade effect began to overlap and amplify each other. 17 alien ships ceased to exist in the space of 10 seconds. But now the other human ships were joining the battle. Captain Laura White aboard the Sentinel fired her ship's quantum cascade weapon for the first time. The beam reached out and touched a group of Plasma Alliance battleships, and they simply vanished from reality. Commander Paul Davis on the Vanguard targeted a formation of Ket destroyers. His quantum cascade beam tore through them like they were made of paper, except that paper would have left debris behind. These ships left nothing at all. Admiral Baker watched in amazement as his small fleet of 23 ships began systematically destroying the largest invasion force in galactic history. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "I'm counting confirmed kills of over 100 alien vessels, and they haven't been able to return effective fire yet. Their weapons can't seem to target our ships properly." That was another feature of Project Lazarus. The quantum cascade systems didn't just provide devastating weapons. They also created a kind of interference field that made it very difficult for conventional sensors to lock onto human ships. The alien fleet, which had come to the Sol system expecting an easy victory, was being torn apart by an enemy they couldn't understand and couldn't effectively fight back against. Captain Danny Rodriguez aboard the Defiant watched his ship's new weapon systems charge up for the first time. "I still don't understand how this is possible," he said to his weapons officer. "Neither do I, sir," the weapons officer replied. "But these quantum cascade cannons are showing ready to fire. Then let's give those alien bastards something to remember us by," Rodriguez said grimly. "Fire." The Defiant's beam lanced out toward a group of Zephyrian heavy cruisers. The cascade effect spread through their formation like a virus of destruction, erasing ship after ship from existence. In less than 20 minutes, The coalition force had lost over 200 vessels to an enemy they had completely underestimated. The survivors were trying desperately to escape, but the quantum cascade effects were creating zones of twisted space-time that made faster-than-light travel impossible. The aliens had come to destroy humanity, but they had flown into a trap that would destroy them instead. Jake Morrison looked out the battle and knew that everything was about to change. Humanity would never again be seen as a primitive species that could be pushed around by more advanced civilizations. "Phillips," he said quietly, "prepare for full-scale engagement. We're not letting any of them escape to warn others about what happened here." What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a complete and systematic destruction of the largest military force ever assembled in that section of the galaxy. The remaining alien commanders tried everything they could think of. They split their forces into smaller groups, hoping to make themselves harder targets. They attempted coordinated attacks on individual human ships. They even tried ramming attacks, throwing their vessels directly at the human fleet in desperate suicide runs. Nothing worked. Captain Amy Brooks aboard the Ranger watched in amazement as her quantum cascade weapons tore through a formation of Plasma Alliance heavy cruisers. The energy beam didn't just destroy the first ship it hit. It created a chain reaction that spread from vessel to vessel, erasing each one from existence in a cascade of impossible destruction. "I've never seen anything like this," Brooks said to her tactical officer. "It's like we're firing pure science fiction at them." "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "I'm picking up alien distress calls on multiple frequencies. They're begging each other for new orders, but there's no one left alive to give them." That was the most terrifying thing about the human attack. The quantum cascade weapons had specifically targeted the alien command ships first. Supreme Commander Vextar was dead. Commander Lisa Hayes was dead. All the senior officers who might have coordinated an effective response had been vaporized in the first few minutes of combat. The surviving alien ships were like a pack of wolves whose leaders had been killed. They had individual strength, but no organization, no plan, and no hope of victory. Captain Steve Johnson aboard the Hunter was discovering just how powerful his ship's new weapons really were. His quantum cascade beam reached out toward a group of 6 Zephyrian destroyers and simply deleted them from reality. Where there had been massive warships a moment before, there was now only empty space filled with strange energy readings that made his sensors malfunction. "Sir," his engineering officer said, "I'm reading some kind of space-time distortion where those alien ships used to be. It's like the weapon isn't just destroying matter. It's actually removing it from this dimension entirely." Johnson nodded grimly. He didn't pretend to understand the science behind Project Lazarus, but he understood the results. Humanity had developed a weapon that didn't just kill the enemy. It erased them so completely that they might never have existed at all. Lieutenant Ben Carter aboard the Ghost Runner was monitoring the alien communications with growing satisfaction. "Sir, the remaining alien ships are trying to retreat, but the quantum cascade effects are creating some kind of interdiction field. They can't jump to faster-than-light speeds." Captain Jake Morrison smiled coldly. That had been another unexpected benefit of the quantum cascade system. The weapons didn't just destroy enemy ships. They also created areas of twisted space-time that prevented escape. "How many enemy vessels are still active?" Morrison asked. "I count approximately 230 ships, sir, but they're scattered across a wide area and seem to have no coordination. 230 ships out of an original force of 847. In less than an hour, humanity had destroyed nearly 3/4 of the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history." But Morrison wasn't satisfied with just victory. The aliens had come to his solar system planning to commit genocide against his species. They had destroyed human colonies and killed innocent civilians. They deserved to face the same complete destruction they had planned for humanity. OT stopping until every last alien warship has been eliminated. Captain Laura White aboard the Sentinel was happy to comply. Her quantum cascade cannons fired again, reaching out toward a cluster of Keth patrol ships. The beam touched the first ship and spread instantly to the others, creating an expanding sphere of destruction that consumed everything in its path. "Target eliminated," her weapons officer reported. "Sir, that's the 8th group we destroyed in the past 20 minutes. White looked at her tactical display. The alien fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming when it first appeared, was now scattered and broken. Individual ships were trying desperately to escape, but the quantum cascade interference fields made it impossible for them to coordinate or retreat effectively. Admiral Tony Baker watched the battle from his command center with a mixture of awe and horror. He was witnessing the birth of humanity as a major galactic power, but the cost in alien lives was staggering. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "confirmed destruction of alien vessels now stands at 612. The remaining ships appear to be attempting individual escape routes." "Let them try," Baker said quietly. "After what they did to our colonies, I don't feel much sympathy for them." The Admiral was thinking about Colony 7 and all the other settlements the aliens had destroyed without warning. 30,000 human civilians had died in the first few minutes of the alien attack. Men, women, and children who had been living peaceful lives until the Coalition fleet decided that humanity needed to be eliminated. Commander Paul Davis aboard the Vanguard was making sure that debt was paid in full. His ship's quantum cascade weapons fired continuously, reaching out to touch fleeing alien vessels and erase them from existence. Each shot removed another piece of the invasion force that had planned to wipe out his species. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I'm picking up what sounds like surrender offers from some of the remaining alien ships." Davis thought about that for a moment. The aliens were finally ready to surrender, but only after they had been completely defeated. They hadn't offered surrender when they were destroying human colonies. They hadn't shown mercy to the civilians they had killed. "No response," Davis ordered. "They had their chance to show mercy when they attacked our colonies. Now they get to find out what happens when you try to commit genocide against the human race." The battle continued for another hour. One by one, the remaining alien ships were hunted down and destroyed. The quantum cascade weapons created zones of twisted space-time throughout the Sol system, making it impossible for any vessel to escape to faster-than-light speeds. Captain Rick Turner aboard the Ghost Runner was keeping careful count of their kills. "Sir, that's the last of the Plasma Alliance vessels. I'm showing no more active ships in that sector." Jake Morrison nodded. "What about the Keth and Zephyrian forces?" "A few scattered ships still running, but they're not coordinated with each other. Captain Brooks and a Ranger is pursuing the largest group, and Captain Johnson and the Hunter is mopping up the stragglers." Morrison looked out at the debris field that had once been the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history. Strange energy patterns flickered through the wreckage, leftovers from the quantum cascade weapons. The aliens had brought 847 ships to destroy humanity, and now there were none left. "All ships," Morrison broadcast, "cease fire. The threat has been eliminated." A strange silence fell over the Sol system. For the first time in hours, the quantum cascade weapons stopped firing. The energy distortions began to fade, and normal space-time started to reassert itself. "Sir," Lieutenant Amychin reported, "I'm picking up communication requests from several alien governments. Word about the battle is starting to spread." Morrison wasn't surprised. Other alien civilizations would have been monitoring the Coalition fleet's progress, expecting to hear news of humanity's destruction. Instead, they were getting reports that the entire invasion force had been completely annihilated. "What kind of communication requests?" Morrison asked. "Requests for immediate peace negotiations, sir. It sounds like they're very eager to avoid having their own fleets suffer the same fate as the Coalition force." Morrison smiled. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically, and every alien government was suddenly very interested in making friends with humanity. "Tell them we'll consider their requests," Morrison said. "But first, we have some cleanup to do here."